Okay, so I saw Beetlejuice this week. Beetlejuice, the second one. Lauren, we're going to do an episode about it. We have to.
I'm down. I still haven't seen it, but I enjoyed the original Beetlejuice quite a bit. That was my favorite costume I've ever done. Halloween costume. I was Beetlejuice, and the wig was shit because I got from like Spirit Halloween the costume or something. So on the night of, I sprayed all my hair up white, and I had all this makeup on, and it was so funny because back then, because I was in high school at the time, so back then I didn't expect like any of the little kids to like know who the fuck I was. I expected like older people to. All the children were terrified. Like I would play dead on the ground outside, like in the neighborhood. And these kids that I didn't even know would just walk up and be like, don't say it. Don't say it. And the one that would do it. And then I just pop up and scare the shit. It was so fun.
I love that. And the one thing that like nobody thinks about with Beetlejuice, because, okay, I'm from the generation where we had the cartoon too. And the cartoon was like Lydia and Beetlejuice were like BFF. But then you watch the movie and it's like, wait a minute, he's like trying to marry a child.
Yeah.
How does this translate into a cartoon? Anyway, we're going to do a whole episode of it because I've already figured out how to connect Beetlejuice to Kurt. But for right now, welcome back to everybody to Simply Amazing. This is the fabulous Nightcrawler podcast for all you Nightcrawler people who love Kurt, can't live without Kurt, can't stop talking about Kurt, just like Lauren and I here. And we have a very special guest for his second time on the show, 3 months too late, which actually, it might have been 3 months since the last time you were here. And it's way too late.
It's been just about that much, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me back.
No, we're so excited. You know, we got into this crazy long discussion, really good discussion last time. And we wanted to continue and talk more about specifically the soul sword with you. So, you know, I know you've got some great theories about it. So I didn't even introduce us officially. So I'm Lisa. We got Lauren here as well.
We don't exist. It's fine.
We're not here. It's more important that we're talking to you. So give us everything, because when I was reading what you were talking about on Reddit, I was like hanging on, like this guy knows what he's talking about.
Lisa is straight to the point. She said, just give me everything now. Everyone here.
Fair enough. I mean, so yeah, when it comes to the soul sword, last time we talked more about like the basics of the theory and then kind of like the larger scale. The soul sword is really kind of the key to understanding how everything gets put together. So like originally, funnily enough, the whole reason I even figured this theory out was because of the soul sword.
Okay.
Specifically back during, I was rereading the third Nightcrawler solo series. And I think it was like issues 7 through 11. I think it was number 11 where basically the whole premise of that was Amanda basically had fused the soul sword with Kurt without telling him or without, revealing anything going on. Kurt just woke up one day and suddenly he was being attacked by magical creatures and he didn't know
That's what
why.
you do to ex-boyfriends. They're also your foster brother. That's exactly what you do.
I guess. But yeah, the soul sword is kind of the key to understanding everything because the way that it works, I figured out basically that, because at the very end of that issue, Amanda basically says that the whole reason that she did this was to protect the soul sword and prevent it from falling into the wrong hands. Which, rereading it back in, I don't remember what it was, 2020, 2019, rereading it back then, I was just like, okay, that sounds like a load of crap. And I kind of thought through the different, I tried to basically figure out, okay, why does this sound like crap? What's her rationale behind this? And is there some sort of precedent behind it in the comics? And yeah, for basically every reason under the sun that you could think of, Amanda was absolutely lying. So, like, for example, like even from a basic standpoint, one between her and Nightcrawler, obviously, she's going to be the better, candidate for protecting the soul sword, given that she's a trained sorceress. In fact, the whole reason she took it from took the soul sword from Kitty Pryde to begin with, back in Excalibur, was because Kitty was not a trained sorceress, and that's something that Amanda explicitly stated. So it's kind of odd that she then decided to switch up her.
I just want to disagree because I'm just bringing this up because I have a feeling that you have a theory that counters this. But the only reason I disagree slightly with this is because I believe that Amanda chose to put it in Kurt because not necessarily because she thought he would necessarily protect it, or but I see it as almost like he's unable to actually use it, to wield it in a way that would be disastrous or harmful to others, because that's not who he is. Like he's got that kind of purity of soul that him wielding him. It's not even like he's wielding it. He was just kind of guarding it or protecting it. But that was, I think that's what I read in that, was that he was the perfect person to choose because that purity of him would not allow him to actually use it to hurt others if he knew it was even there.
Yeah, well, and so she did also bring up the whole purity aspect of Kurt as well, where she felt that his soul would not be corrupted by the soul sword, which, mind, before this point, being corrupted by the soul sword really wasn't a thing. Like, that wasn't, like, yes, Ileana always suffered from being, dark child, and that was a whole thing of that self, but usually she was using the soul sword to try and ward it off, typically, is how that worked out. And there was a short, brief period that Kitty, I believe, was the one who got temporarily corrupted, though it wasn't clear whether that was from the soul sword or whether that was from something else, because this was also around the same time that like Grave Moss and a whole bunch of other magical people were trying to get their hands on the soul sword. But between not telling Kurt that she had even done this, which that's another major thing, is that it's like, why didn't she tell Kurt that she was doing this so that he could protect himself, better? But then you could also have things like, why didn't she take this to Doctor Strange, who's, better suited for using he protects magical artifacts on the regular. So you would think that if it was to protect the soul sword, protecting the soul sword was the priority, that she would have taken it to Doctor Strange. But then, probably most crucially, she still needed the soul sword to rule over Limbo, because she was ruling Limbo at this point in time. And the only reason she was even in charge at that point was because of the soul sword, which was basically proven almost immediately after she gave it up, because Belasco then ran back into town and drove her out. So it's like, there's a multitude of reasons why, Amanda is lying in that situation. But kind of piggybacking off of that a bit, the whole reason why, it kind of led out from there, that I've kind of realized that, no, the whole reason she fused the soul sword with Nightcrawler was not to protect him, but she was trying to effectively not split his soul. But the way that it works is that back in I believe it was Excalibur number 85. No, it was Excalibur number 100 through 103. So the OG, the Soul Sword trilogy is what it's called. But basically what happened there is you have Margali, who tricks Amanda into getting her the Soul Sword, and then proceeds to use the Soul Sword to go on a killing spree and steal all the powers from the other Winding Way users.
Oh, that Margali.
Yeah. But this was kind of the point that proves that the Soul Sword could influence the Winding Way, which, if Nightcrawler's, if the magical half of Nightcrawler is the source of the Winding Way, then it kind of makes sense that would happen anyways, because both are operating off of soul magic. It's the same kind of magic so that really just, it brings it all back to that idea of him being this crucial part of the Winding Way, and why Margali would have wanted to adopt him in the first place, and also maybe why Destiny, now that we have Origins, why Destiny would have sought out Margali specifically, knowing that Margali would have a reason to protect him and make sure he made it through adulthood, rather than just, throw him in a bag, like some kittens in the river. Yeah. Well, and speaking of Destiny, the whole reason why Margali even did that was because of a prophecy that Destiny told her about the Soul Sword. So the whole reason why Margali, the whole reason why Margali was so obsessed with obtaining the Soul Sword in that comic, it was revealed in, I believe it was Excalibur -1. It was in a flashback that Amanda was basically like, not recounting, but like it was one of those situations where it's that same sort of deal.
Yeah.
The whole reason why she did this was because of a prophecy that, the soul sword would pass into Margali's hands and then it would pass into Amanda's hands, but it would ultimately be the destruction of both. Now, mind, Margali's not a precog. She's never had any sort of, prediction or ability. I think she reads fortunes for people, but that's not the same thing.
Yeah, it's like tarot.
But it's one of those things that, so you have the situation where you have Margali who not only tells a prophecy to Amanda, but like a really accurate prophecy, one that basically that we see come true throughout the entire run of Excalibur and up until I think it was X-Men Unlimited number 19. Basically between that whole thing, and mind, Excalibur -1 kind of had the benefit of hindsight because it was written after the Soul Sword trilogy and all that stuff had gone down. But the whole reason why she's doing this is because effectively of a prophecy, and we know that Destiny is the one who visited her and gave her Kurt, or I guess told her where to find Kurt after Kurt was born.
Yeah, that whole part is kind of vague because all we know is that Mystique left him under a tree and then she went back and he wasn't there. So Margali either was told or Destiny escaped and took him. We don't know.
Yeah. But basically it's kind of one of those things where it's a 1-2 punch where Destiny, not only by giving Kurt to Margali, she both gives him, she both is able to create the, basically hands her the keys to making the Winding Way. And getting, that magical power, off the table and kind of out of sight for later use or, to be brought back whenever there's like, say it was Enigma or say it was someone else. I know we theorized a whole bunch about it last time, but in that same stretch, she then she told Margali about the Soul Sword and the means by which to restore him. She set that all in motion because...
Yeah, no, this is just very fascinating. And it's so monkey's paw in a way, because it's just like, it's yes, Destiny is giving Margali and Amanda everything they want, but like you said, it leads to their own destruction in the end. So it's just like, very monkey's paw, like, I wish for a turkey sandwich, but the turkey is dry.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, and so and it's one of those things that she knew that, Margali wouldn't turn down, like, even if it was going to inevitably be the downfall of her, like, she would never turn down such a magically powerful artifact, getting her hands on one. Mm-hmm. And this is actually, so there's kind of a specific thing I always mention whenever I'm talking about this, Destiny didn't specify which soul sword it was that was going to fall into Margali's hands. And mind, this is because, at this point, Ileana's soul sword doesn't exist. I'm not even sure Ileana was even born at this point.
Mm-hmm. Well, no, if it's when Kurt's like a baby,
if it's Kurt's birth, when this is, if this is shortly around the time where Kurt was born, then no, Ileana would not have been born.
Yeah, and I mean, we're ways off from her because even Peter wasn't born yet. So
yeah, so but what this causes is it actually causes Margali to go after Belasco's soul sword. Now we know that Belasco has a soul sword because I think it was only recently established with the Jackpot and Black Cat series. It was their tie-in with the Second Inferno back in 2021, where they basically Belasco sends them to try and steal back his soul sword, which he has one, but he can't use it because the Elder Gods basically took it from him to basically ensure his loyalty.
Mm-hmm.
But basically what happened was from there, we also know that, it's also kind of easy to figure this out that Margali tried to steal Belasco's soul sword because it kind of helps explain this really weird rivalry between Margali and Belasco that is never explained in the comics. Like, this pops up And like out of all of the appearances that Margali shows up in, or Margali and Amanda show up in, it's like mentioned at least once per series, I want to say. Like it comes up a lot and nothing is explained about it.
And you're right. I mean, and Belasco plays a large part of that Nightcrawler series at the very end, which culminates in the fight for the Soul Sword and also sets the scene for this idea of this big demon shakeup or war that's going to happen that nobody picked up on and never happened. So, hey, writers, if you're out there, this like hanging plot thread about a demonic war in the magic realm has been hanging around now for almost 20 years. And you know what? You guys are really getting into the magic in the MCU. So, hey, why don't we grab this dangling plot line and do something with it?
I have a question, but it might be really stupid, but I'm going to ask it anyway. So, because there are obviously multiple soul swords, but we only call them all the soul swords. So, A, how do you distinguish between them? And B, how many are there?
So that's kind of one of those nebulous things at this point, because so obviously you have Illyana's original soul sword that she made back in her original series, back in like the 1980s under Claremont. Since then, it's like nobody's really touched it, but there have been mentions of like other soul weapons. Like, so for example, I know I mentioned Sebastian Zardos in the previous podcast that I was on. He was actually fighting against soul snipers, is what they were called. So basically, same idea. It's basically a soul weapon, but it's a sniper rifle instead of a gun, or not a gun, instead of a sword.
Do you guys remember when Angel briefly had a soul sword? Do you remember this situation?
I do not.
Okay, this literally just came up. It was like it randomly came to my mind when you brought up Illyana making her own soul sword, because that is a lot of myth that I'm not very in. Like, I don't know a lot of. I mean, I follow the Nightcrawler stuff, but all of this other stuff, I'm not as into Illyana. But I really loved the character of Illyana in Exiles, and randomly in Chuck Austin's super quick, like when he was writing Uncanny. He did a crossover with Exiles that he wrote where it was like, you know, Nocturne comes and meets Nightcrawler, and then like all of the different Exiles all come and they all like hang out. And there's one part at the very end. It's such a weird, like quick thing. But now that you mention it and bring it up, I'm like, why did they do this? This is so stupid. So basically at the end of the series, they're kind of wrapping it up and they give it one of those, you know, at the end of like Real Housewives or Hoarders, they have like those, oh, you know, Luann went to the Cape and then got a divorce. And then, oh, this one did this and then did this, like those kind of wrap ups. Like they kind of did that at the end of this little crossover. And one of the things they mentioned was that during the battle they had with these stupid freaking wolf mutates, I didn't want to get into it. It was so dumb. During the battle they had, Warren had gotten access or had taken Illyana's soul sword to use. And then Illyana, this is Exiles Illyana, so it's not 616 Illyana. She wanted it back. And he was like, nope, I'm not giving it back to you. So she just made her own new one and the Exiles left. And I was like, was the whole purpose of that to give Warren a soul sword and then we never hear about it again? Like, what?
I feel like that was a Chuck Austin thing where he was trying to make the whole angel demon thing very literal.
Really trying to push that whole idea of like angels and demons are actually like mutants that go back before biblical times and have been at war for centuries.
I wouldn't put that much value into it, like, because it never shows up again. Yeah,
I like literally it was just like he keeps it, she's just like, whatever, keep it, I'll make my own, and then leaves. Okay.
Yeah,
but no. It's an interesting little addition to the soul sword. There's also Pixie's soul dagger, which is a whole other thing.
Yeah, and Pixie actually plays another pretty big role in this theory as well, where she's the one who actually is, she's the one who removes the soul sword from Kurt during Ex Infernus, and that's kind of what kicks off the second half of the whatchamacallit. Basically, it kicks off everything going forward with because that's how Illyana gets her soul sword back. That's how it leads into basically everything involving Illyana up till the present. And funnily enough, like Illyana has absolutely no idea about any of this, like anything about like what's going on with the soul sword. She doesn't even know that Amanda has it, as far as I'm aware. or had it at a certain point. But where was, I was talking about, before we got sidetracked, I was talking about you guys are fine. I was talking about Belasco's part, and how that kind of led to him, how Margali trying to steal his soul sword basically put both her and Nightcrawler onto the map of Belasco's map, because suddenly there's Belasco basically figures out that Nightcrawler is somehow the source of Margali's power. And Belasco wants to probably use that power for the Bloodstones, because that's basically his motivation whenever he shows up in comics, is basically he either wants power or he wants to fulfill the Bloodstones so that he can release the Elder Gods and, whatever have you. So, the first thing he does is he's trying to gun for Nightcrawler. Now, I know it's mentioned in the third Nightcrawler solo series that Nightcrawler himself was never targeted by the different, demonic attacks. The reason for this is because Belasco originally kidnapped Nightcrawler and the other X-Men. That's why they're there in the OG Magic series. He kidnapped Nightcrawler, not kidnapped Nightcrawler. I think the way that it was put in the series is that he kidnapped Illyana and then used her as bait to draw out the X-Men and force them into his domain. But the end goal is the same. Nightcrawler was the original target, which is why there's that Soulless Nightcrawler in the OG Magic series. It's just Belasco clearly didn't know as much about Nightcrawler's situation as he thought he did, or he didn't realize that, Margali pulled something over on him. Something happened there, and basically Belasco gave up on Nightcrawler and turned his attention to Illyana, which then led to her making the Soul Sword, as a result of him kidnapping her.
That's really fascinating. I mean, I'm just, it's like all trails lead back to our boy, which is kind of funny. Even in these stories that really have very little to do with him, he still plays such an important role. Although now I'm kind of like imagining a weird, like Rick and Morty-esque situation where there is a version of Margali in another universe that has kidnapped Illyana and just forces her to make soul swords for her all day.
Oh, God.
Like, I feel like that is not outside of Margali.
It absolutely is not outside of her to do. But
no, I could see her doing. I could see her traveling the multiverse to find, just like Rick did in Rick and Morty, travel the multiverse to find other Illyanas to take home to make as many damn soul swords as she wants. I love the idea of evil here's the thing. I love evil Margali, but I also love good Mother Margali. So like when you take good Mother Margali and mix it with evil Margali, it's like my perfect Margali.
So, but yeah, that's basically, that's not the extent of it, because there's a whole bunch more to talk about with like Amanda's side of things. But like that is basically like in terms of the overall how Destiny pulled this off. It was literally, either she told Margali about Kurt and then, basically told her where to find him, as well as told her the prophecy of the Soul Sword. And then she also, basically gave Kurt to her and said, okay, here's also this prophecy. Go have fun, essentially.
So here's the other thing. Like Destiny is a precog.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't know how long she's been working on this. So
I'd say no, go ahead.
Go ahead. Well, Lauren, what are you going to say?
Well, I just want to make sure I have the timeline right, because with the new retcon, so Destiny had her memory wiped by Charles with Mystique. Yes. They had their memory wiped. So when did Destiny, because if Destiny still handed Kurt off to Margali, it had to be before that. So is it canon that still happened, or is that floating around?
Well, so if you remember, there is that 5-year time skip between Kurt's birth and then when Mystique meets back up with Destiny to have their minds wiped.
That's true. But the point I want to make is I want to go back further than that, right? So if the whole point of Kurt's birth, right? If we're going to use this theory you're proposing, right? And the point of Kurt's birth is not just about this Azazel shit that they put in the comics, but it's also about ensuring that he gets into Margali's hands because of his soul sword connection or whatever else, or his magical connection, right? And that was a part of it, is to make sure he gets into Margali's hands so that he is raised to adulthood, so he can, take do this, whatever this Azazel bullshit is. I mean, here's where I'm going with this. How did they end up with that German count? Do you know what I mean? Like, how far back was Destiny planning it? Like, did they end up with that count because that count was the closest to where Margali was? Did Destiny have time in the years, who knows, leading up to this?
Oh, it's much bigger than that.
This is what I'm saying. Like, there could be years where Destiny was in contact with Margali saying, I'm a precog, I know what's going to happen, and I'm going to give you proof, and when these things happen that I say are going to happen, when those things happen, I'm going to come to you with a baby, and you're going to have to take care of that baby. And like, do you know what I mean? It's like, this could have been going back hundreds of years.
So here's the thing. I am fairly certain that the whole reason why Kurt was born was to stop Enigma, at least initially.
Okay.
So this is kind of tying back into Immortal X-Men. And that flashback back, I think it was 1915, is when she first realized Enigma was a thing. And it was at like a music concert. And I think that was where she initially came up with the idea for Nightcrawler. And I say that because the next time we see her, she's a part of the Project Black Womb. Along with like Mr. Sinister and Black Womb herself, and then like a couple of other different characters who are basically trying to basically practicing eugenics on mutant children.
I'm sorry about my expression right now, but like, it all makes so much fucking sense that it almost feels like it has to be intentional, or the writers just coincided themselves into, like, yeah, you're right. Like, she learned about Enigma, and then she spent how many years with geneticists and people who dealt in, DNA.
Because she was trying to orchestrate Kurt's birth. She was trying to create, basically my theory is that she was trying to create an Omega level mutant chimera that would be Kurt. Yes. So the reason why, and that's why she included characters like Christian Wagner and Azazel. Like, and if you actually pay attention, Azazel actually came later. Like, they first went to Baron Wagner. They were the ones who went to Baron Wagner, and it's not because they liked him, and it's not because he was pleasant. No, it was because they needed his DNA. Like,
so this, oh my God, this is like crazy to me, because so I just like, I'm just drawing the comparison from the show The Boys, which obviously is much later, kind of, but like, in The Boys, all the superheroes are man-made, right? They're all man-made except Ryan. Ryan is the first actual born superhero. And this is like what I'm hearing here from you is like, all these chimeras are man-made, but Kurt is the first actual born chimera.
Yeah.
And that...
Well, and actually, he was made before any chimeras have ever shown up.
Well, before they've shown up, but like, Sinister's been working on that shit for a long time.
Oh,
you know what I mean? Like,
my
mind is fucking blown. That's all I'm saying. Like, my mind is blown. This is just wild. And I love this. And God, please, if you're out there listening and you write for X-Men, use any of this. It's not up to me to say, but just look. I think there's so much to be seen from looking at the history of the comics and saying, what can we do to build on this rather than what can we do to change this? And this is where it's at. You just find these connections, and it doesn't even have to be like a perfect connection, but as long as you can make it make sense, it can, this just elevates so much of this story for me, and it changes so much of it.
Yeah, it definitely adds a lot more to, like, and it makes sense, like, and that's kind of the thing about this theory that, it's like, the more I think about it, the more it makes sense, which is usually a pretty good sign that the theory's at least got a strong basis.
I totally agree. I felt that way. I had a strong theory that Kurt was the one who killed Wanda. I had a really strong theory, and I actually built it up in a way where I thought that like it was solid, and it was wrong. But again, it's like what you're saying. It's like, if you can find the pieces that line up, it's exciting. It's exciting to have those pieces line up and to find other pieces to fit into your puzzle and make a whole picture.
I think too, all of this, it makes so much more sense as to why they brought Destiny back after all these decades too. Because that was the biggest thing with her coming back. It was like, we barely know her because she barely was around, and even when she was, there were pieces laid here, but not much was actually done. And now, she's potentially, the biggest orchestrator of all time.
Oh yeah.
With
I mean, precognition will do that to you,
Yeah, I mean, I'm just imagining, like, how Mystique would react if she actually put all these pieces together. Yeah. She's got some of the pieces, and she knows something. She knows she's missing things, but just imagine, especially now with the retcon and everything, and the fact that, like, they've made it evident that she at least kind of loves Kurt. Like, there's some motherly intention there from her part. That's it.
But
we're going to be crying. We're going to be sobbing whenever that hits.
I want to point something out. Mystique has been very clear that she does love her son. Destiny has not expressed
exactly
much of that. In fact, what she has expressed, in my opinion, this could just be writing, but it was also Kieran Gillen, so it's like I feel like he's a better writer than this. What she has expressed has been a little over the top, in my opinion. So the thing is, if we take this whole story, right, and we believe it and we say this is the story, then what would really support this story is Destiny sees him as nothing more than a tool.
I mean, I feel like at the same time, though, like, really good writing for this is there are layers. I think it could be very much like this was all orchestrated in such a way, and then the kid was born, and maybe Destiny tried not to have feelings for him, but then she got feelings, and maybe that was why part of why she personally wanted her own memory wiped as well, was because she's like, fuck, I can't have feelings for this kid, and maybe some of that's still lingering, and she still did all this, and she still feels like she should not, cannot, maybe does not at times, like, have a feeling. Like, I think there's more gray area to explore with her involvement in this. I don't think it's one or the other. I think it's
and it's going to be, there's the Mystique side of things, where obviously Mystique is not going to take that well, like if she ever learns the truth of that. But then there's also, because Ileana got dragged into this as well, and her side of this is like, she's not going to take it well at all either.
No, like, I want to say something that's going to break Lauren's heart completely.
Yeah, this is what Lisa does. Breaks my heart once a week.
What if her relationship with Raven is just part of the plan?
See, I think it's very possible that in the beginning, maybe it was. Like, I'm with you on the fact that, like, it's very possible from start was, but then she did actually fall in love, and that fucked her up, but she tried to push through her. Like, I think that makes sense. And maybe this is the bi in me, but it's the gay yearning, okay? It was supposed to be nothing more than a job. It was supposed to be nothing more than her plan. And now she's all wrapped up, and it's more fucked up than ever. Because if Destiny had not fallen in love, this plan would not be as fucked up as it's gotten. It would be a lot more clean cut if Destiny had done it by the book, especially because she's a precog. But she did fall in love, but I don't think she intended to.
So here's the thing. I would agree with you, with both of you, actually, if it weren't for the fact that, Destiny and Mystique's relationship predated any sort of situation with Enigma. And any sort of...
Did it is the real question, especially with Destiny's abilities and how old she is or was, how Mystique was.
Because we know that Destiny didn't know about Enigma until 1915. So there's at least a solid 50-year gap.
That's a good point. I wasn't
for the gays. Get wrecked, Lisa.
Where I think I think there did come a point where there was a certain aspect of that where, because Destiny became so preoccupied with making sure Kurt was born, that she kind of did use Mystique, where Mystique's abilities did line up enough for her, for her uses, that she decided that, we're just going to use that. And that could actually be a bigger, reason why she and Mystique might have a falling out.
You're right.
Because it's more hurtful. Like, her getting used by Azazel, Mystique wouldn't care about that. Her getting used by Baron Wagner, she wouldn't care about that. If Destiny uses her, that's gonna sting.
Yeah, I would say that Mystique is probably at this point has put up such a guard around her that she can't get used by people easily. But once you get past that guard and you betray her, then that's unforgivable.
Yes.
Well, and there's evidence of that too, because I mean, that was very evident when Mystique found out her memory had been wiped. That felt like betrayal. It felt like she was used and all that shit.
I want to point out one thing, go back to something you said about, there's one thing that they bring up and they talk about in Blue Origins, which was that, there had been other relationships and other pregnancies prior to this relationship that brought together Kurt. So
I would be shocked if, Mystique and Destiny weren't popping out kids, long before he was born.
Well, I don't mean between them. I mean that I took that as them talking about, because we know Destiny has a great grandson that we meet. And then we also know about Blindfold. So I took that as they've actually gone apart and come together a couple times.
Yeah.
And I wonder, and they, and there's something about the way they talk about conceiving and carrying Kurt that this one was so much more important and so much different than the others. And it's like, okay, but why though? Because granted, it's important to me because I fucking love the guy. Thank you for giving birth to him. But why though? You know what I mean? I would say that
for them, it's like, okay, because they never just do something and that's kind of the thing about Kurt's birth is that there are so many aspects of it that just don't make sense. If you disregard the theory for a second, if we're assuming that the theory's not right, why go after Baron Wagner? Why involve him at all with Kurt's birth? Why involve Azazel? Really, when you actually think about it with Azazel, Destiny's explanation as to why, Kurt was born to stop Azazel doesn't make sense either, because realistically, Destiny and Mystique could have solved that with a gun.
Yeah.
Literally, you could just have Mystique attack Azazel. When he teleports, Destiny predicts where he's going to be, and she shoots him.
Yeah.
And that's resolved.
And also, no matter what kind of precog you are, a plan that has a 30-something year timeline, there's way too many variables in that time. When you like you said, literally he's sitting in front of you at dinner, pull out a fucking gun and be done with it. It's over. You're there's too many variables over that much time to allow for somebody to be raised to adulthood and then have to deal with it.
What's interesting to me with all of this, these theories, is depending on who you are, you lean one way or the other, right? There's you either lean towards the they had this plan, but also there were feelings involved, and there were also things that did happen that were slightly surprising or different that they had to adapt to, or maybe they made choices they didn't think they would make, versus the whole, oh no, it's perfectly orchestrated and blah, blah, blah. And I think that's what makes this so interesting, and why I think it would be so cool to see writers explore this, because there's so much gray area in between that. There's multiple areas where you can make it clean cut and say, oh yeah, this was the plan for a start, and that's it. There's also multiple parts of this where you can add the, oh yeah, but there was love, and hey, they got tripped up here or something.
Yeah. Well, and honestly, I actually like the idea that of Enigma being defeated by something completely that Mystique and or Destiny specifically, that Destiny did not see coming. That she thought that the Phoenix Force was going to fail and would die, and so that would be where that's why they needed Kurt. But then it turns out, oh no, Phoenix Force ended up destroying Enigma anyways. I kind of like that idea where Destiny, where not that it was all for nothing, but it didn't quite, it was still important that Kurt was born, because obviously with the Hope Sword and all of that. But
it was important for so many things outside control, because here's the thing. We talked about how Destiny, we basically imply throughout this conversation that Destiny's precognition is perfect, and it's not. And she's admitted that, including in Immortal X-Men. She sees options essentially, and she sees probabilities with those options, and sometimes the probability is 99%, and she's pretty fucking sure, and there's still that 1% what have you. But yeah, her power isn't as clean cut as we're making it sound.
Oh no. So
yeah, no, I'm so glad we had you back, because this has been a amazing conversation, just building on the last one, and I'm sold. Gail, are you listening? Make it happen. Make it so. But thank you again so much for coming again. 3 months too late. We had you on 3 months too late, but we're so glad we had you back.
Thank you guys for having me back.
Absolutely. And if you ever want to come back and talk about anything again, in 3 months, we'll have you. How about it?
Oh, well,
Well, tell everybody where they can find you online if they want to come tell you they agree or not.
Yeah. So again, probably the easiest way to get a hold of me is through Reddit. Outside of that, there's not really. I should probably get like something like an Instagram or something at some point here, but that's okay.
It kind of feels like all of the social media sites are like crashing and burning now, and I just whatever. It's it is what it is.
Yeah, it is what it is. So, but reach out to me on Reddit. That's a pretty solid place to get a hold of me if you have any questions or if you want to talk about the theory. But yeah,
perfect, awesome, love it. Yeah, for me, for me, just come to my house and knock on my door at this point because I don't.
Just jump out of her fridge. It's October. She's prepared.
I'm not prepared, and I am not on high blood pressure medication yet, so don't scare me too much. Anyway, Lauren, where can they find you, girl?
I'm mostly on Twitter at friendly MBHCBI. Yeah, all social media is going to hell, so it's fine.
Yeah, no, it is, but whatever. What can you do? We are also on Twitter at Simply Amazing Pod. You can all find everything on simplyamazingpod.com. That's got all our links and everything. I have not updated it in a long time, but guys, it's been me and Lauren have been going through a lot the past couple months, so we appreciate all the time you've bared with us through our personal and professional ups and downs as we get going. But yeah, it's been fun. Anyway. But yeah, please come find us, come talk to us on all of our socials, and simplyamazingpod.com. And also, if you're listening and you liked what you hear, please give us give us some high ratings and go on Reddit and find 3 months too late and tell him how freaking amazing he is and how like your mind has been blown by all this. And yeah, if you're out there listening and thinking to yourself, I wonder if I'm part of some huge like legacy thing that's been foretold for generations. Calm down, but you're still simply amazing.